We're talking about a critical issue that takes place behind mostly closed doors domestic violence. The court service published figures just this morning showing that the number of applications for domestic violence protection has increased by 25% over the last 5 years.
Joining us now to shed light on this is Trisha Rooney, who is a domestic abuse survivor, and Sarah Benson, CEO of Women's Aid. Good morning to you both. It's so lovely to have you here. And Trisha, I just want to say a huge thank you for being willing to come on the sofa and talk to us about this. Can you explain to us what happened in your relationship, because it was one where there was domestic abuse?
There was. I was 15 when it had happened on my partner at the time. I didn't get out until I was 28. There was 2 kids also involved. Everything was good up for about a year and a half, but we were kids. Like, I was 15 when I got into the relationship. The first assault that was took on me, I was 16. I was getting ready to see some friends. I had said to him I didn't want to be in the relationship anymore. He didn't take it too well, so I continued to get ready. I went into the bathroom, and when I was finished, I opened the door and he came in on top of me. He first took a razor blade and put it up to my face. I pleaded with him. He then dragged me from the bathroom into my bedroom. Now, I was living at home, obviously, at the time. There was no one at home. He continued to attack me again. He had picked up an iron that I had used to iron my clothes beforehand, and he went to stick that to the side of my face. It couldn't reach that far, but he got it then, and he had hit it off the wall. Now, he continued to attack me on the ground, and I was in just a state of shock at that stage. When he finished, he cried, he apologised. He said he didn't normally act like that, just emotions got the better of him. I didn't know what to do at that stage. I was nearly confused of, it just happened so quickly. So I continued to get ready. He left and went home, and he kept calling, kept texting, kept apologising. I'll never do it again. So I took him back, and things were good again for a while. Then it just went to name calling. He didn't touch me for a while again after that. And I moved out of the home place when I was 18. And things were still, they wasn't great, but it was kind of more push and shoving at that stage. It wasn't as severe as what it was then. It was when I got pregnant with my son, I was 23. And it seemed to when the children came into the picture, it was when things took a turn for the worst. So I was attacked when I was pregnant. After my son was born, I still remember when he was placed on my chest, it was nearly that I had someone else now to protect. It was that feeling. I actually resented him a lot more when my son was born. Yeah. So I knew I had to just keep him safe. So things took a turn, as I said, after that. The abuse got worse. And by the time... Would
you be hit?
Oh, I'd be hit, yeah. I'd be attacked for no reason. I could be cooking dinner and I could have something thrown at me. He could break out in a complete rage. He'd make up scenarios in his head. He was very paranoid. When I then had my daughter, it got to a stage where before I got pregnant on my daughter, it got to a stage where if I didn't sleep with him, there'd be consequences. We were at a family event. It was a party, and I had come home, and he told me that if I was going to act like a tramp, I was going to be treated like one. So I didn't know where it was all coming from. He just completely lashed out again. He was taking his belt off, and that's when he came in, and I kept saying, no, like, this is not happening. He then took the lead from the PlayStation, and he whipped me with it over again. He told me if I refused, the consequences would get worse.
If you refused to have sex with him?
Yes. So it just continued to happen until I got pregnant with my daughter. Now, she wasn't conceived in a way that, was normal, so that was hard. I felt like, will I resent her when she's born? Thankfully, I didn't. During the pregnancy on her, it was just absolutely horrific. He was getting worse. He was getting more sinister. The rage, it was the blackness in his eyes. It was nearly like, it's until I read other people's stories, I used to think, like, was it me that, do you know, his eyes just go really black. And it is seemingly a thing. But once my daughter was born, it just completely lost out of control. And then COVID hit. And that was when I actually thought, like, this is it. Like, your life is going to be taken if you don't get out. So 4 days prior of me escaping the house with my 2 kids, I was a punching bag for 4 days. I was bed morning, noon and night. I wasn't eating. I wasn't allowed to sleep. Not even so much of having a glass of water. It just got completely out of control. I lived in a bedroom for 4 years. With my kids, we slept, ate, played there. It was nearly our little safe environment in that house.
Yeah.
I went to work. I'd come home straight to the room. So...
Did you have... Oh, there's so many questions.
Yeah.
And the thing is, this happens. This has been
It
happening
does.
for centuries.
Yeah.
It's behind closed doors, like yours was, with
Yeah.
2 small children. So did anyone know? Did they think he was just a bit...
My friends had, not to the severe stage of it, you know, like...
'Cause who could imagine that?
Exactly. And you get to a stage where you're too afraid to leave and they make you feel so little that you don't deserve anything else. And this is how you should be loved and this is normal. But it was till COVID hit that I knew it wasn't. He got to a stage where people would say to me, why didn't you fight back? If I did, he used to pin me to the ground and he used to put each knee on each arm and put a pillow over my face and he'd suffocate me for a while. Now, there was times I thought, like, your life's going to end. If it wasn't him trying to suffocate me, he was strangling me. And my son, who was 4 when I got out, this is all he's seeing. There was times if we were driving in the car, he could hit me if I was driving. There was times he'd completely lose control in the car and would threaten to kill me and the lads. He'd take our lives with him. It just got so severe.
It's just frightening. And
It
as you
is.
said, Maureen, this goes on and it's behind closed
Yeah.
doors. People aren't aware. How did you talked about COVID? You thought, I need to get out here or else I'm going to die.
Yeah.
How did you get out?
So he was attacking me in the hallway. Now, this day still gets to me a lot. He was attacking me in the hallway. My son was standing at the room door. He continued to attack me over and over again. He was kicking me in the ribs. He got up when he was finished and he spat on me. And he walked into the bathroom. And I remember thinking to myself, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? So I looked at my son. He was gone blue around the lips. He was crying so hard. And I gathered myself as much as I could up off the floor. I picked him up. Now, I wasn't allowed a mobile phone. I wasn't allowed to see family or friends. I was, at that stage with COVID, we were only allowed to go so far anyway, but I wasn't even allowed outside my door for a very long time. I was basically captive in my own house. So when I picked my son up, I got the phone. He had left his phone on the locker, and thankfully he did. I grabbed it, I locked me, my son in the spare room.
Yeah.
My daughter was asleep in the cot, and I rang my mother. And I was so hysteric on the phone, she couldn't really understand what I was saying. And I just kept telling her, please get up here, just please get up here. So when he came back into the room, he noticed his phone was gone and he completely lost it. He kicked the whole spare room door down. I had my son in my arms and he attacked me again with my child in my arms. My mum came and I can still remember feeling the fresh air hitting my face when I got out of that house. Even the heat off the sun, I can still feel it. So I walked out. I was in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, which were so ragged. I was in them for days. My hair wasn't even hair anymore. It was just matted. The very words he said to my mum that I still remember when I got into the car was, no matter what she says, it isn't true. So she kind of knew by the state of me, like, you can clearly see there's something wrong. So she took me down to hers and he came down he started threatening. He just completely lost it. So I had to leave there. It's in a housing estate. There's kids there, you know. So another neighbour had taken me to her house, and my dad came, and he was worried about me, and I couldn't, up to only 2 years ago, I told him what I've been through, because I'm a daddy's girl, so for him to hear that, it is hard. I told him I'm done. I said, I'm not going back. So when I went back to the house that night, he was gone, and the neighbour gave me a phone. And at the time in our kitchen, we had like a fork going through the thing. The lock had been gone out at that time. The house used to be just trashed with living with him. And that night he got in through the window, came into the room. He was pleading with me. He saw I had a phone, completely lost it. I panicked because it wasn't my phone.
Yeah.
I picked it up, I curled up in a ball, and he attacked me again. And then he left, and that was it. He went to England for 2 weeks. And then when he came back, he got his own place. He kept pleading with me, but I was too scared at this stage. So I tried for the kids. At the time, looking back now, was it safe for them? No. But at the time, I thought I was doing it right. It was their dad.
You thought?
Yeah, so I thought I was doing the right thing.
It just doesn't sound real, Sarah. It doesn't sound real.
No,
It doesn't, it's horrific. But this isn't an aberration of a story, Sarah.
No, unfortunately, and you know, women like Trisha, it's a hugely courageous thing to actually even share the story publicly. What I will say is, just for anyone who's watching, you know, the National Free Phone Helpline is there every minute of every day, and the number is 1-800 341 900, because there's so much in just the short amount of time, you know, in terms of Trisha sharing her individual story and that of her children, but you know, that building up over time, that kind of things that almost seem incidental, but they're so important, not letting somebody see their family, cutting them off on the phone, you know, taking control over everything. And then, you know, in some cases where there's also the physical violence, you know, sexual violence, all of these things, they're all components of coercive control. So if anyone is starting to feel like I'm slightly losing myself a little bit here, or if I was to say I wanted to do something and I feel like my partner might react, you know, in a really extreme way to the point where I might choose not to do it, those can be kind of early warning signs of what can be a years-long, you know, suffering, where one person is choosing to exert so much power, so much control over the other. And that's the person who's responsible here, because the impact of having somebody come at you from all angles, mentally, emotionally, you know, financially, cutting you off from, you know, those who are in your, you know, in your family, in your network, who might be able to say, you know, this isn't normal. When it gets to the point where even saying something, you know, if I say something, the consequences are going to be so heavy, so bad. So it's really important that we as a community, you know, keep on saying that message, is that when this happens, it is not your fault. It is the fault of the person who's choosing to behave this way. It's an abhorrent way to treat the person you're supposed to love and respect, and your children. You know, being a parent is a privilege and a responsibility. It's not a right, you know. So taking control like that has devastating consequences, but there really is help there, and Trisha's a great example of someone who's come through it.
And for people to pick up the phone to Women's Aid, but if you don't have a phone, I mean, Trisha, you have turned your life around.
I have.
You've had another little baby,
I did.
3-year-old. You represented Ireland recently at Bodybuilder, came second in an event in Manchester, which is just amazing.
As you and your husband now with the kids.
Which is just fantastic. If you have one little bit of advice for people watching this morning, what would you say?
Get out where you can, whether it's a safe place, safe person, and keep fighting. There is a light at the end of that tunnel. I know it might not seem at the time, but there is. So keep going.
And he did eventually attack you publicly in the street, and he was convicted for that.
Yeah.
But you've moved on with your lovely family.
Yes.
Speaking out like this, thank you so much. Like Trisha, I can't even imagine being able to do this, and I'm sure you can't imagine 6 years ago being able to do this either.
Yeah.
You're amazing. Thank you so much. How are the kids?
Great.
They're great.
Flying it.
Flying it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Trisha.
Thanks a million.
Trisha Rooney
so much.
and Sarah Benson with Women's Aid. Thank you both for coming in this morning.
Thank you so much, both of you. Thanks a million.